Moltes gràcies al senyor Roler. Crec que ens ha fet una presentació realment autèntica i apassionada i de la que podem extreure diverses conclusions que discutirem més endavant al torn de preguntes o debat, però jo em quedo personalment amb aspectes com la qualitat de vida, la tradició i l'autenticitat del destí que ens ha mostrat. Moltes gràcies, senyor Roler. A continuació, els presentaré el pròxim ponent, és el senyor Bruno Lüthi, és el director de màrqueting del Club Alpí Suís, a Suïssa. Ell va estar 5 anys a càrrec del programa de qualitat de turisme de Suïssa a la Federació de Turisme del mateix país, a Berna, i des del 2001 dirigeix les accions de màrqueting de la secció de refugis de muntanya del Club Alpí Suís. La seva ponència tractarà de l'hostaleria a l'alta muntanya, en el cas concret de la xarxa de refugis del Club Alpí Suís. Senyor Lüthi, sisplau.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the possibility to give you a brief overview over the mountain huts, the challenges of the mountain huts, of hospitality in the high Alps. I'd like to make a short look back on the origin of alpinism, to say what is the Swiss Alpine Club, a look back in the origin of mountain huts, and then I come to the huts of today, the guests' wishes of today, and finally to the challenges of building and maintaining huts, running huts, and the challenges of marketing. The origins of alpinism. To better understand a little bit the developments and the challenges of mountain huts, I give you a brief look back on those beginnings. As we heard this morning, till the mid of 18th century, the Alps were considered a place of fear. But then poets and philosophers described and romanticized the Alps, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, like Albrecht von Haller and Goethe and others. And finally, the Swiss nature researcher Benedict de Saussure carried out his first expedition on Mont Blanc in 1760. However, the first ascent was made until 1786. Following the period of the 1850s to 1865, this was considered the golden age of alpinism in Switzerland, with many first ascents, which were more like expeditions of several weeks those days. And in those days, also the world's first Alpine Club was founded in 1857, excuse me. And it was namely the Alpine Club of England. And some years later, in 1863, the Swiss Alpine Club was founded. So last year was our 150th anniversary. And I give you a brief picture of the Swiss Alpine Club. As I said, it was founded in 1863. It has 111 sections with over 5,000 volunteer officials. And I have to say that the Swiss Alpine Club can only operate because so many people volunteer. And I think many of the sport associations worldwide wouldn't work without volunteer work. That's the same in Switzerland, the same in the Swiss Alpine Club. We have over 140,000 members. We count as the 5th largest sports association in Switzerland. About 80% of our members are German-speaking, less than 20% French, and 2% Italian-speaking. average age of our members is about 52 years. We have 26 full-time jobs at the central office and a budget of about 30 million Swiss francs, that's about 10 million euro. So that was a short information on the Swiss Alpine Club. I'd like to go back to the origins of mountain huts. These first huts were more like alpine shelters, and they were built about 200 years ago. I don't know if you see this. This was one of the first alpine shelters on the moraine of a glacier in the Bernese Oberland. And those huts served mainly as bases for research expeditions and summit ascents. And they were built as protective and emergency shelters in secure locations where they were safe from avalanches or landslides. And the construction methods were very simple. For example, as you see here, a stone walled and covered with a tarp. The interiors of those huts looked a little bit like this. The guests slept, cooked, and ate in a single room. And there was often no access to water close to the hut, and sometimes no stove for heating, and the occupants slept on straw or either on the floor. That is around 1910. The first hut in Switzerland was built the same year the Swiss Alpine Club was founded in 1863. That's the Grünhorn hut. This was in a region where the first expeditions of the Swiss Alpine Club were made, the region of Lüthi in central Switzerland. The same hut 150 years later. This is a picture of a project of last year, an anniversary illumination project. Swiss illuminating artist Geri Hofstetter enlightened 26 huts during the summer of 2013. So, the huts of today. That means the Swiss Alpine Club and its sections run and operate and maintain 152 huts and bivouacs, and the total asset value of those huts is around 250 million Swiss francs, which is about 200 million euro. And the annual renovation requirement amount is between 6 and 8 million francs, which is 5 to 6.5 million euro. And to know that huts require totally renovating after 25 to 30 years. So we have quite a lot of investitions in our huts. We have 9,200 sleeping places, and this is one of the largest accommodation providers in Switzerland, I can say. In 2013, we had 322,000 overnights. That's about 1% of the overnights in Switzerland in hotels. The revenue in the accommodation was about 6.5 million Swiss francs, and the food and beverage revenue in 2013 about 19.5 million francs. And we count around 1 million day visitors. That's a figure we are not quite sure if it's correct or not. There exist 3 types of huts today. We have the permanently attended huts, like the one here, the hut of Goats in the Engadin. There are partially attended or guarded huts like this one here in the high mountains, and we have bivouacs. And that's the inside look of those three types of huts. You see the hut warden with ice creams, serving ice creams in his hut, self-catering hut up here, and the bivouac up here. About 120 huts are located between 2,000 and 3,000 meters above sea level, some 17 huts above, some 19 huts below. In the following, I will focus on huts run by a professional hut warden, and I will show you some examples also of huts that have either been built or renovated in the recent years. Like this one, this is a new built hut, the Cash hut in the year 2000, nearby Davos. One of those typical types of hut of today. Now, so you can't read really what I wrote there. What's the purpose of mountain huts today? First of all and foremost, they provide protection and emergency shelter for mountaineers. And they are starting points for backcountry ski tours, for climbing tours, high alpine tours, or mountain hikes. And around 1/3 of all huts are located in high alpine terrain, which means they are only accessible to accomplished and well-equipped alpinists. And these customers, the alpinists, still have rather modest demands because they do not stay in a hut for a long time, for a long period. They search for a place to sleep. They want to have a heated room with drying facilities, a warm and nourishing meal, and some information on touring conditions and weather forecasts provided by the hut warden. So those demands are still pretty low, I can say. For example, this is a sleeping room in a alpine hut. Not very, very comfortable, much more comfortable than the huts around 1900. This is a modern sleeping room for 4 people with duvets and not the itchy woolen blankets that you know of older times. The purpose of mountain huts today is also well, you can say in recent years, many huts have increasingly become excursion and overnight destinations for mountain hikers and holiday guests. And they also represent a one-of-a-kind offering in Swiss tourism. And they also, like Mr. Roulet said before, are not typical, but they are traditional, I would say. So the mountain huts also bear witness of the development of alpine tourism, and they are cultural assets. Important to mention is that hikers have other and more demands than mountaineers and alpinists, and they have different expectations of a hut. For example, they prefer small bedrooms, as you saw it, with duvet. They would like a 3 to 4 course evening meal. They appreciate separated toilets and washrooms, and some would like to shower after their hike. And more they expect to have mobile phone reception or even Wi-Fi access. Here's a look in a traditional dining room in the Seven hut, and this is a view, a panoramic view from the dining room of the Capanna Monterascio in Tessin. So you see the difference between modern hut and I would say traditional or old hut. This is another type of a new hut, the Cristallina hut, also in the Italian part of Switzerland. It was built in 2003. Now I have to say clearly, and you can't read it, mountain huts, nevertheless, they are not hotels. They remain simple mountain accommodation, as also the guiding principles of the Swiss Alpine Club state. So you will never find single bedrooms in a mountain hut. There are only few double bedrooms in a hut. There is no daily linen change compared to a hotel, no evening a la carte menu. You have no room service in a hut, and usually you don't find showers or warm water in a hut. Although huts have to fulfill stringent state requirements. The requirements stipulated by laws apply to all accommodation providers regardless of their location, if it is in the valley, if it is in the city or in the high mountains. And that means you have to fulfill all the labor laws, you have to pay the minimum wage also to your personnel in the hut. You have to fulfill the food and beverage laws, the fire protection regulations, and also the sewage regulations. And this results in immense challenges when it comes to the construction, maintenance, and running the mountain huts, coupled with high costs. This is also, you can see, combination of an old building here and a new building in the Cabane de Moiry in the French part of Switzerland. This is the view from the lounge of this hut. It's much more authentic than a 3D cinema, I think, with the glacier back there. So, I'd like to put the question, what mountain huts require or expect of their guests? Not what expect the guests of the hut, but also what the huts expect of their guests. They expect to observe the mutual respect required of many different people staying in a confined place. They expect also the willingness to accept and interact with fellow guests. So in the evening you sit on big tables. You don't have the tables for 2 or 4. You have really big tables, and you interact with your guests, fellow guests. And they expect also moderation when it comes to service expectations. So a hut can never fulfill all the expectations you might have as a guest. And last but not least, they also expect the respect of nature. Another picture of that's the very recent hut, the Cabane de Traquis in the French part of Switzerland, was built last year, 2013. So I come to the USPs of mountain huts. What are the unique selling propositions of mountain huts? I think that mountain huts offer an incomparable experience. That means it's a unique experience, a nature experience in stunning locations. It's, you find there a slower pace of life and tranquility far away from the daily grind. You have fantastic views and a clear and starry night sky, what you find seldom in the city. You have nature and environmentally friendly forms of sustainable tourism, and the traditional and the modern is united under one roof. These, I think, are the main USPs of the hut. This hut might look familiar to you. It's one of the showpieces of a modern mountain hut, the Monte Rosa hut nearby Zermatt, which had quite a good media presence the last few years. This is the same hut illuminated by Mr. Hofstetter last year. So what is a mountain hut of today? What features a mountain hut of today? I think it's the contemporary architecture, which fits harmoniously with the landscape, I think. Maybe not in every case, but in this case I think it does. It's also state-of-the-art technology when it comes to energy consumption, to sanitation concepts. We use, as far as it's possible, renewable energy sources, so the sun, the hydro and the wind, and you find regionally sourced food and beverages in the hut. Now, what are the hut guests of today? These are some statements out of a guest survey that we made 2 years ago. So 70% of the guests are between 30 and 60 years old. 60% are members of an alpine club, not necessarily of the Swiss Alpine Club. There are many more in Europe and overseas. 60% of our visitors are hikers. So you see, the main part are not the alpinists, the main part are the hikers. And 50% book less than 3 days in advance, so the stay in a hut gets also very, very short booked. And 75% of the guests spend only 1 night in a hut. And that's also astonishing. 60% would be prepared to pay higher prices for more comfort, for example, smaller rooms. The changements in guest requirements, you can see in the past, the requirement was water supply close to the hut, own cooking, separate ladies' bedrooms was one requirement in the old days, large dormitories and woolen blankets. These were facts in the past. Today, people would like to have showers in the huts. They prefer half-board. They want separate toilets, they want small bedrooms, and they want to sleep in duvets. So the question arises, how far should or must the huts adapt to their guests' requirements? Or vice versa, how far should guests adapt to the circumstances of the huts? The fact is, huts do not have really any competition in their location. You cannot go to the hotel nearby the hut or to another hut because there is not existing another possibility. I come to the challenges of building huts. As I already said, we have to fulfill many legislation requires. This requires also the use of complex and expensive technology. Meeting the constantly growing demands and changing guest demands also require greater investments in the infrastructure. The adapting to the changing of the climate is also a really big problem, because as you all know, the consequences of climate change are already more pronounced in the Alps than elsewhere. And they are particularly apparent where they endanger hut locations due to thawing permafrost, or where they increase the access risk to huts and climbing routes, or where they restrict water supply, because due of the glacier melt, many huts are having difficulties meeting their water supply needs. Additional funds are urgently needed to effectively counter the consequences of climate change. This also means accessing new funding sources, for instance, state funding. So far, there has been no public sector funding for the Swiss Alpine Club, in contrast to the surrounding Alpine countries. Here you can see an example of consequences of climate change. This is a mountain flank nearby Grindelwald in the Bernese Oberland. You can see here the trail to the hut that went until a few years ago, somewhere like there. Now you have to pass over here and pass another way. Another consequence of climate change is the need for technical aids on hut access trails. This is the example of the Monte Rosa hut, where you come from the glacier to the hiking trail. Last but not least, more and more suspension bridges are built to overcome dangerous sections in hut access trails. So these are the consequences of climate change for the huts. What are the challenges of running huts? We have to adapt the expectations of the guests. They are increasing, and we try to offer additional services like guided hiking tours from the hut, like events, or we offer extended culinary offerings like dietary meals and so on. We have to deal with the consequences of climate change, as I already said. This is namely the access trail maintenance and the ensuring of water supplies. And we have to guarantee a certain profitability for hut wardens. But despite the complex logistics, the prices charged by hut may not be significantly higher than those in the valley. So that's a little bit a problem for the hut. The marketing challenges are, well, you could ask why market huts at all, and there are really several reasons. Due to the climate change, the climate change also had a big impact on alpinism. Because of increasing risk, you have less guests, less alpinistic guests in the hut. There is an emerging new outdoor activities such as mountain biking, for example, snowshoe hiking in the winter. We also have a renaissance in hiking activities or nature-based activities. I would say mountain vacations are trendy again, and we have those new guest groups with changed requirements that we have to fulfill, and also the guests have a higher awareness regarding service and quality because they are experienced in traveling around. Just to show you the figures that make clear that the climate change also has consequences in the overnight stays. In the 1990s, the total amount of the overnight declined to the minimum in the year 2000. Since then, the average of the total of overnights is increasing again. And we hope that we can, with our marketing goals, try to keep this direction. Our goals until 2020 are to maintain the overnight stays and the revenue figures. We'd like to improve the occupancy during the off-season and weekdays, because then we have capacity in our huts. We'd like to improve the service quality and environmental awareness, and we'd like finally to strengthen the brand of a Swiss Alpine Club hut. What is the strategy behind this? We'd like to approach new guest groups such as hut trekkers, long distance hikers, families, also mountain bikers, and we'd like to position our huts clearly in relation to those target groups, like family huts, like mountain biker huts, and so on. We also we did investments in new communication technology. Since the end of last year, we have a new online reservation system in operation for our huts. And we also do partner cooperations with tourism organizations like Switzerland Tourism, like Switzerland Mobility, the network for non-motorized traffic in Switzerland, and others. And we have to find really more financial power by acquisition of funds through professional fundraising. So I come to the end. I think despite all uncertainties, challenges and difficulties, the ultimate goal of our endeavors is and remains guest satisfaction, like those children with the pie in the hut. And I'd like to end with a quotation. I think he was also a mountain liker, Paolo Rumis, an Italian travel writer, who said, "I look for the soul in a hut and not convenience." Thank you very much for your attention.